wọlé ọlá àwa yóò bá Muhammad wọlé ọlá. Ọlọ́run á jẹ́ ká bá Muhammad wọlé ọlá. Àmì ẹ̀ pọ̀ ṣùgbọ́n àmì nìkan ò rán o. Ànábì ti sọ pé ẹni tó bá nífẹ̀ẹ́ ṣe sí òun yóò fẹ́ràn òun, ẹni tó bá sì ti fẹ́ràn òun náà ni yóò bọ́ òun wọnú ọgbà àdìjọ́ náà onídẹ̀ra. Kí wá làwọn ìṣesí Ànábì gan-an lè tó wọlé ọlá dálé lórí. Wọlé ọlá ẹ pàdé Imam Kọmọdún Àjàlá àti àwọn gbajúgbajà dáńtó onímọ̀ ìjìnlẹ̀ àfáà tá a máa gbà lálejò ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ọ̀sẹ̀. Sunday aago 10 sí 10 àbọ̀ àárọ̀ làǹfààní ètò wọlé ọlá yóò máa gorí afẹ́fẹ́ ní MITV Muri International Television. Wọlé ọlá 10 to 10:30 a.m. every Sunday. Wọlé ọlá àwòkọ́ṣe tó dára jùlọ fún gbogbo ẹ̀dá lára Ànábì ló wà.
Assalamu alaikum markasi dáwà ń kó gbogbo ènìyàn síbi post Ramadan lecture ìyẹn wá sí ẹ̀yìn àwẹ̀ eléyìí tó máa wáyé lọ́jọ́ Sunday ọjọ́ 23 oṣù karùn-ún 23 May 2021 láago 9 àárọ̀ ní Àjàdílẹ̀wá event center 71 Bangbose Street Lagos Island ìpínlẹ̀ Èkó pẹ̀lú àkòrí ọjọ́ ọ̀la ẹ̀sìn Islam nílẹ̀ Yorùbá. Àwọn oníwàásí Imam Abdulhakeem Al-Kutubi wọn yóò máa bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ lórí líla àwọn ọ̀dọ́ lọ́yẹ̀ lórí Islam eléyìí tí ò lábà wọn nílẹ̀ Yorùbá tí bàbá wa Ustaz Abdulhakeem Abu Mardiya oníyàwó mẹ́ta yóò máa dá wa lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ lórí pàtàkì àwọn àfáà lójúpọ̀nà Islam nílẹ̀ Yorùbá. Bàbá wa Amir Komodin Àjàlá Muhammadu Juma ni yóò máa gba gbogbo ènìyàn lálejò tí wọn yóò sì fún wa ní ìmọ̀ràn gbogbogbò lọ́jọ́ náà. Ẹ má gbàgbé o ọjọ́ Sunday May 23 2021 ní Àjàdílẹ̀wá event center láago 9 àárọ̀. lóun mọ́ bàbá sọ pé nílẹ̀ Yorùbá ẹ̀rí ni kẹ́ ẹ béèrè fún. Màá sálàm.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما فخير الكلام كلام الله وخير هدي نبينا محمد صلى الله تعالى عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة فكل ضلالة في النار فليعوذ بالله من ذلك. Ọlọ́run májà wọ náà àtàwà àtẹ̀yìn Ọlọ́run ká wọ náà bá ṣe máa ń ṣe ọpẹ́ náà la máa ń dá fọ́lọ́run ànílẹ̀ wọn dáhùn orin yẹn lénìí àdúgbò fúsátì ramani tó ní ká wáyé bákan náà aláwọ̀ gáyà tó náà ti dárú dáwà wa àti kàyín náà àdúgbò fáwọn afáwà tí wọ́n tọ́ wa sọ́nà. lénìí afẹ́kẹ́ farabalẹ̀ afẹ́ fi fọ́nrán bíi mẹ́ta kan hàn yín torí pé tó lọ lágbàáyé lónìí òun náà ni ìrẹ́nijẹ tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ó wá nídìí pàtàkì tá a fẹ́ fi hàn yín. àkọ́kọ́ afẹ́gbẹ́ tó bá wo kínní ojú ìjọmọlúàbí ìjẹ́ ènìyàn láfẹ́kẹ́ bá wa fi wò ẹ má fi ọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sìn sí i torí pé àti muslim àti christian kò sẹ́ni tí ò lè kílèmù ibi tí wàhálà ti ń ṣẹlẹ̀ yẹn tá christian bá mú báìbù wá àná máa mú kùránì wá àmẹ́ká gbé báwo lẹ̀mí ṣe ṣòfò níbẹ̀. ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kejì ìlú israel gangan fúnra rẹ̀ jewish state náà máa ń pè so yẹn pé wọ́n sọ pé muslim àbí christian state lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ báyìí according to wikipedia ní 2019 àwọn jew tó wà ń bẹ 74% ni wọ́n muslim 17 christian 2% nílùú israel gangan so ẹ̀mẹ́ka kọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sẹ̀ gbígbọ́n tó ń protest káàkiri àgbáyé náà wọ́n fọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sìn sí àfẹ́ kó dá wà lálẹ́ ní nàìjíríà tiwa náà ni ṣó yẹ báyìí sí so ẹ̀ka fara balẹ̀ gẹ̀ẹ́sì ni àmọ́ padà sọ ní èdè abínibí wa we want you to watch this clip almost 14 to 15 minutes. It has to do with Palestine and Israel conflict. We are showing this video because of three things. One, we want you to look at it with humane on humanitarian ground. Because Christians can claim the land, so also Muslims can claim the land. And you can see that all over the place where they are protesting, they are not protesting based on religion. They are protesting based on human rights. So we don't want a religious riot in our beloved country, Nigeria. The Jewish state right now, according to Wikipedia 2019, the Jews are 74%, Muslims are 17%, while the Christians are 2% in Israel right now. So please, don't give it a religious coloration. Human being is very, very important. Then religion, we don't want to shed anybody's blood. So just watch. After the program, we're going to comment. Bismillah.
There once was a land called Palestine where Christians, Muslims and Jews lived fine. In the 1800s it was ruled by the Ottoman Empire. Meanwhile a bearded guy founded Zionists for Jews to aspire, a land that becomes their home and safe only for their kind. Then there was World War I that ended when the Allies won, and England was like, hey, this beautiful land is totally mine. Till the name was Palestine, even though it was colonized, and a promise for a Zionist state was made by a man that had no right. Then more and more Jews arrived seeking refuge, and that's alright until their plan to steal the land was no longer to hide. The year was 1948 when Israel bullied its way into a state. Thousands of Palestinians fled their homes to survive. No right for return, no right for a home, no right to fight for the land that they owned. Israel expanded more and more into an apartheid. Where is your humanity? Where is your respect for dignity? Call it conflict, that's insanity. It's time to change your mind. One day Palestine will be free, so be on the right side of history. You're not anti-Semitic if you stand against war crimes. Don't be brainwashed by the news. Now you can see for yourself the truth. Learn about the story of Palestine.
Palestine and Israel. It's complicated. Well, at least that's what some people would like you to think. We've long been sold the narrative of a tit-for-tat skirmish of rockets, a real estate dispute, or even a centuries-old religious feud. There's so much more to the story of Palestine we all need to know. So, how did we get here? Let's take it back to the beginning. It starts with the end of a world war, Muslims fighting each other, and a promise made by the West only a century ago. So here's how the story begins. It's 1916, and the First World War is raging on. The Ottoman Empire is 617 years old at this point and is on the brink of collapse. The British and the French had promised the Arabs sovereignty and Arab leadership over the Arabian Peninsula and the Levant if they helped them defeat the Ottomans. And so the Arabs said, okay, and so they helped them defeat the Ottomans. Now I know what you're thinking. What's this got to do with Palestine and the creation of Israel? Just trust me, we'll get there. Okay, so when the British and the French won, the Arabs wanted the land that was promised to them. But little did they know, the British and the French had this little top secret meeting. And in this top secret meeting, it was planned that the captured Ottoman province will be divided into areas of British and French control and influence. The British would receive Palestine, Jordan, and southern Iraq, while the French would control southeastern Turkey, northern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This was called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But then the Arabs found out about this agreement and they were shocked. They had been bamboozled and tricked. They thought that they were fighting a war in order to overthrow their non-Arab Muslim rulers, only to end up with, you guessed it, European colonial rulers instead. Anyway, that's a long story for another video. Now that the British occupy Palestine, something unusual is happening back in Europe. You see, the Zionist movement had been growing increasingly influential and lobbied hard to support the mass migration of Jews to Palestine and recognize a Jewish claim to the Palestinian land. And in 1917, Britain, out of nowhere, publicly declared its intentions of establishing a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. So the British just gifted Palestine, a country which was made up of 90% Palestinians, to European Zionists. They gave it just like you would give a box of chocolates. Historians still debate till this day why the British gave Palestine to Zionists. It's simply baffling. Now, at this point, the Jewish population in Palestine was less than 10%. So when the British started to facilitate the immigration of European Jews to Palestine from 1922 and 1935, the Jewish population rose to 27%. With the British mandate in full swing, mass European Jewish immigration meant that more land would be seized and the native Palestinian population grew increasingly worried. The Palestinians would demonstrate their concerns to their British overlords, but they wouldn't have it. European Jewish settlement was on the rise. The British proposed a partition of Palestine and even advised the forceful removal of the Arab population from their homes. And yes, this was their plan to resolve the issue. So the Palestinians naturally rejected this proposal and revolted against the British. The revolts were crushed violently, killing thousands of Palestinians. But the Palestinians wouldn't give up. They would continue their fight for independence, and the British were clearly fed up. So in 1947, the British decided to hand over the responsibility for Palestine to the United Nations. So basically, they just said, here, clean our mess. And so the UN proposed this ridiculous proposal again, where Palestine will be partitioned into a Jewish and Arab state. Remember, Jews in Palestine only constituted 1/3 of the population, most of whom arrived from Europe just a few years earlier. Yet, in this proposal, they were allocated 55% of the land. Feeling like they got a bad deal again, the Arabs rejected the proposal, and the Zionists accepted. However, here's the catch. The Zionists didn't agree to the proposed borders, and even campaigned for more land. So they agreed to an Israeli state, but didn't agree to the size of it, so they can just choose it for themselves. By 1948, Zionist militia would storm and capture Palestinian-populated villages and cities, leaving thousands of Palestinians homeless and landless. The Zionists wanted to seize and cleanse as much land from Palestine before the British would officially withdraw their forces. And on the same day that they left, the Zionists proclaimed the establishment of the new Israeli state. Overnight, millions of Palestinians lost their country. And what's even more bizarre is that immediately the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, recognized the new state of Israel. And if it couldn't get any worse, May 15th, 1948 was perhaps one of the darkest days in Palestine's history. They called it the Nakba, or the catastrophe. To lose your country, your identity, and your home just like that is something truly horrifying. But that wasn't enough for those Palestinian men, women, and children. They had to be ethnically cleansed from their lands and driven into near total destruction. See, the creation of the State of Israel didn't just mean that 1.9 million Palestinians were forced out of their homes. Didn't just mean that 78% of historic Palestine had been taken from its natives. Didn't just mean that 530 villages and cities were destroyed and ethnically cleansed. And didn't just mean the killing of 15,000 Palestinians in a series of mass atrocities. It means that it was the start of something even more horrifying for the Palestinian people. It signaled over 70 years of occupation, home demolitions, arbitrary arrests, displacements, Israeli expansion, military checkpoints, construction of walls, discrimination, massacres, and bombing of innocent men, women, and children in their own homes. So no, it's not complicated. The Palestinians are a people who have been oppressed and had their lands taken away from them and have been suffering ever since. This is how the events of the past shape the conditions of today. This is why it is important to remember and reflect our history before it repeats itself again. Because Allah knows we don't need it to happen again in another part of the world. May Allah lift the pain and the struggles from our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Ameen.
To suggest that there are two sides to this story is utterly perverse. To suggest that Israel is simply defending itself is an obscenity, and shame on anyone, on any so-called world leader, wherever they are, if they repeat such an obscenity. The truth is that the international community has seen what has happened to the Palestinian people in full sight and in full view, and they have stepped back and allowed this to happen. So to the UN Security Council, to the entire apparatus of the international community, let me say this, that we see you. Your people and your population see you. And whereas the great and the good of the international community may find it acceptable to step back and make an argument of the one hand this and on the other hand that, and meanwhile Palestinian refugee children die, make no mistake that that is not an acceptable position to the people of the world. I feel confident that global citizens are appalled and repulsed and enraged, quite frankly, that here we are again and Palestine suffers. So yes, we need a cessation, and that needs to happen immediately. And yes, we need a full-scale humanitarian effort. But above all else, let's be clear, we need justice. We need the rule of law to prevail. We need Palestinian self-determination. We need the state of Israel to be finally called out for what it is, a racist apartheid regime. And we in Ireland, perhaps more than any other people, have a special obligation to act on all of this, because we know the colonial experience, the experience of dispossession and division. We know what it is to be left destitute. So we have no excuse not to act. So Minister Coveney and your government, when will we recognise the state of Palestine? That has been agreed in this Parliament years ago. When will we see the occupied territories legislation advanced? And when will we finally insist loudly, clearly and consistently that the law be respected and that Palestinian lives matter?
عزة ما في ايدهم اشي دبابات صواريخ كل اللي بدهم اياه جايبينه على الحال انا ولا حدا حامل اشي بايده كله بس ايش انه حملات سلميه عشان يحققوا الهدف ونرجع لبيوتنا هذه ولا لهم اشي في هذا البيت ولا ذره تراب في لهم ولا بفلسطين من حيفا ليافا لكل البلاد اللي فلسطين ما لهم اشي هون فينا ما إلهم. هذه فلسطين هاي أرض عربية تاريخيا من آلاف السنين، بس هاي هجمة استيطانية على كل منطقة في القدس، بالذات بالقدس خسرونا فيها.
خالته أنت من أي بيت؟ احكي لنا.
إحنا بيت عبد اللطيف من ضمن ال 28 سكنة اللي إحنا مهددين طبعا بالإخلاء يعني. تخيلي أنا بنيت بيتي رتبته طوبة حجر ربيت أولادي من حماي لجوزي لإلي لأولادي كلاتهم 70 سنة وإحنا ساكنين في هذا البيت ويدعوا إنه إلهم وبيطلعونا بكل القوة، ويوم ما بيجوا بيطلعونا من البيت لما طلعوا دار الغاوية. شايف السكنات العسكرية هاي من راس الشارع لتحت ولا حدا ولا نفس. طلعوا الناس من بيوتهم عراة حفاة، كانوا الساعة 5 نايمين. هذا الجيش الظالم، هذا الاحتلال القذر، هذا لازم نتخلص منه. إسرائيل دولة وهمية يا عالم يا شعب عربي، هذه دولة وهمية، هذول ظلام هاشمين على شباب وبنات ما في ايدهم سلاح ولا في أي شيء. هاي دولة.
alhamdulillah rabbil Yorùbá ló kù tá a máa sọ báyìí torí pé gbogbo ètò yẹn Gẹ̀ẹ́sì ni. Tábà rí pé wọ́n protest káàkiri àgbáńlá ayé, ìtọ́sọ náà ni pé the human rights nature of the issue has to be considered. So àwa náà in our own little effort we are calling on the 5 powerful nations, the America, the British, the France, Germany and China. Gbogbo resolution tó ti pass kó jẹ́ correlate of the day. Solution kò pẹ́ ẹ ti create the state of Israel, fine, wọn lè kó ń bẹ̀ mọ́ ẹ̀mẹ́ka dára láàmú. State of Palestine náà ẹ hàmù wọn, ẹ̀kọ́ náà ní àmì tiwọn, kọ́ lọ́lọ́pàá wọn, kọ́ judiciary wọn, wọ́n ní wọn ní social amenities rárá àtẹ́ńdẹ̀lẹ́ kan lè wọ́ bẹ́ẹ̀. Bàtà náà 2014 ọlọ́pàá ló ń tẹ̀lé ọgbẹ́ bí tá a lọ ilé ẹnukọ́ ẹ fún yàn ní state ẹ fún wọn ní independent ṣe fún wọn ní sovereignty wọn. That's our calling this morning. We are calling on these 5 powerful nations to at least implement UN resolution so that we can have peace at that part of the world. So ó kàn wá mosque kẹta wa ibẹ̀ ló wà bẹ̀rẹ̀ alábìgbà lọ gba ìrun wa bẹ̀rẹ̀ pé ojú àwọn aláìmọ̀ kan tó ń sọ nínú àwẹ̀ pé kò sí tó jọ àwọn ibẹ̀ tó Suratul Isra. So ọlọ́kùnrin ṣàánú gbogbo wa pẹ̀lú fẹ̀ẹ́nú táwọn èèyàn ń lò. So ẹjọ́ nítorí tọ́lọ́run ká máa fi wọ́n sínú àdúrà wà láti nàìjíríà náà pàápàá pọ̀ ọlọ́ba ní iná mọ́lẹ̀ mú mi nínú èkó wa ọlọ́ọ̀lọ́mọ ìyá ni wá o tó bá ń ṣẹlẹ̀ káàkiri ó gbọ́dọ̀ concern wa àní ká lọ jà àní ká lọ gbé nǹkan kan àmọ́ ká máa fàdúrà ká máa fi ràn wọ́n lọ́wọ́ wọ́n nínú mẹ́fà làwọn máa ń kí lójúmọ́ àsùbá àyínlà asiri mákìrìṣà àti rúsókù jùlọ máa ń kí rúsókù lára so wọ́n tẹ bá gbọ́ tó ń fi òrùn jẹ́ yìí láàárọ̀ lè bullet bomb ló máa ń jẹ́ àwọn láàárọ̀ ọlọ́pàá ṣàbà àdó tiwọn. bákan náà a fẹ́ sọ nípa ọ̀rọ̀ hajj Saudi Arabia sọ pé èèyàn 60,000 péré ló máa ṣe hajj lọ́dún yìí ṣe pé láti à 10,000 náà ti ẹ̀ gbà so 60 ni wọ́n allow kó máa ṣe hajj ní ọdún yìí so ó nu 60 yẹn 15,000 máa wá láti gbogbo Jasirata Arabiya nílùú wọn gangan so 45 náà máa fún gbogbo àgbáńlá ayé mo ń sọ ilé yìí àkọ́kọ́ ni pé owó yẹn máa wọ́n wá ẹlẹ́ẹ̀kejì wọ́n tí wọ́n bá padà rí pé kó lọ ọlọ́run ló kọ́ àrùn yẹn ìwà mo tán fi ń try láti rí pé wọ́n curtail àwọn èèyàn kó pọ̀ nìyẹn for example ṣe bí 20 country náà tẹ̀lé pé kó má wà rárá fún àwọn ọlọ́run máa ń supply ju bí Indonesia Pakistan India United Arab Emirates Egypt gan Africa wọ́n ní kán má wà so àwa tá a ti lánàá pa fẹ́ lọ sí ájì tọ́lọ́ba ló máa ní ká lọ ká bọ̀ kọ́lọ́ jẹ́ kó bọ́ sí i tọ́ba ní ká má lọ ẹ̀ka ní sùúrù lọ́dún tó ń bọ̀ that's my own appeal right now ní ìsọpá àní lọ o but only Allah know who is going to perform the hajj the number is very very small and we are doing it to curtail the spread of that pandemic so just have faith that once Almighty lasting Allah to live long next year we are going to perform it inshallah on our own part hajj must roll àmàṣe seminar ìjọ Saturday tó ń bọ̀ láti brief àwọn èèyàn wa láti intimate wọn pé these are the current issue one tàbí ṣùgbọ́n òsì ẹ̀tọ́ wa máa lọ sáájì ọdún yìí tí ó bá ní 3 million àfẹ́ wọ 2.5 torí ẹ wo umra tí wọ́n lọ lásán umra normally 900 wọ́n lọ ní 1.4 1.3 so ẹ wo gap ẹ wo tó gorí almost 500,000 so àti ìsọ ti ájì lórí ẹ̀fà ni pé yàrá èèyàn mẹ́rin èèyàn méjì náà ń kó síbẹ̀ so wọ́n fẹ́ kí èèyàn pọ̀ nínú yàrá so a kàn sọ fúnlẹ̀ pé àwọn tá a bá ti sanwó a bá fẹ́ sanwó ó possible pé pé nọ́mbà tán fún wa ó máa kéré so wa ma tasha'una illa an yasha Allah rabbul alamin ẹnì kò ní fẹ́ kankan àyàfi tí olùwà fẹ́ so lágbára Ọlọ́run 24 tó kún bọ̀ níjọ́ Saturday tó ń bọ̀ ẹ pàdé wa ẹni tó fẹ́ bá mi lọ sí hajj ká brief yín what are the next line of action kọlọmọ kí ó wà pẹ̀lú wa bí tọrọ hajj ṣe jẹ́ nìyẹn ẹni máa wọ sórí péjì wa hajj mosuru 2021 a máa post information síbẹ̀ ká lè bá àmọ́ what to do and what not to do particularly àlọ́ ẹni ká gba abẹ́rẹ́ COVID-19 yẹn o kó tó bá padà pé lọ ṣọtí sorúkọ wa tábà gba abẹ́rẹ́ yẹn ọ̀tún máa jábọ̀ ni it's compulsory to take that first and second dose they are going to start second dose next month inshallah so try as much as you can to take that injection it's very very important so and finally ẹ kí gbogbo wa lọ mọ̀ wípé kò sí ọ̀nà tá a fẹ́ gbé gbà tí ọlọ́ba la máa lọ à ń lọ tó bá láàánú lọ kò sí ọgbọ́n tí a fẹ́ ṣe sí ìyẹn bákan náà mo fẹ́ sọ fún wa yìí pé ọ̀rọ̀ èmi àti àfáà tí wọ́n ń pè ní Lukman Adébáyọ̀ gẹ́gẹ́ bí ọmọ ló jẹ́ sí mi torí a padà pàdé ní zone 2 mo gbé wá sórí program pé ó ní èmi ni mo ní kí Saheed Shittu kó máa gbé fọ́tò àwọn àfáà síta kó máa gbọ́n kó máa ṣépè so pátá dọ́dọ̀ PPRO ọ́fíìsì ẹ̀ ló treat issue yẹn so wọ́n ní pé kí ni evidence ẹ̀ kò rí wọ́n nítorí pé òun gbà tó bá bọ́ bàbá àwọn ẹ̀kọ́ náà bú àfáà tiẹ̀ wọ́n ní in a law something wọ́n ń ṣe bẹ́ẹ̀ so wọ́n wá ní kí ni mo fẹ́ tẹ́lẹ̀ mi ní petitioner mo ní kó tọrọ apology kó yẹ ká kíni ká gbàgbé ẹ̀ so I said you should tender unreserved apology particularly on Islamic TV where he make that derogative statement and make a defamation of character about my personality so I just said you should make a unreserved apology but if he did it Allah tí o bá kọ́ tí o bá ṣe no problem mo ti gbàgbé yẹn sẹ́gbẹ́ kan nìyẹn so wọ́n lè sọ fẹ́mi náà pé kí n gbìyànjú kí n bá Saheed Shittu sọ̀rọ̀ kó yẹ bọ́ àfa kó yẹ ṣe pé kó lè display his photo one that's my own part I'm going to do it more mo ń ṣe tẹ́lẹ̀ náà I'm still going to do it more so issue èmi àtàlà Al-Qur'ani o ti rest as a case kọ́ ló máa kí ó wà pẹ̀lú wa àbíọ́lọ́ lẹ́nìí tá a bá ti kó ń bí ẹ pàdé wa ní 71 Àbágbóṣe bẹ̀rẹ̀ láti ní seminar tí a pè ní Future of Islam in Yoruba Land Alhaji Abdulhakeem Al-Kutubi àti Alhaji Abdulhakeem kí ó di rọrùn àwọn ni wọ́n máa bá a sọ kódà wọ́n pè é sí pé èrò ti kún bẹ́ẹ̀ dẹ́múdẹ́mú so if you are living in Lagos Island Lagos mainland Ajégúnlẹ̀ you can still come the program is going to extend to 2 o'clock where we are going to stop for Salat al-Dhuhr so the reason is pé afẹ́ká yẹn mọ̀ kí náà ń pè ní pristine Islam kọ́lá láò kọ́ra sol ìfọ́lámi sàlẹ̀hìn tó pé ẹnu ẹ̀wọ̀nú àwẹ̀ oríṣi àwọn hẹ́rẹ́sì kí ẹ sọ fún wa pé ànábì olọgbà ọ̀run wá ẹ máa wọn ọ̀rọ̀ tó ti yanjú kí ẹ sọ fún wa pé òṣùpá òpin sí méjì kí ẹ máa pe àbúrò rírà ní alátẹnujẹ kó máa pe àbúrò láṣàrí ní dẹ̀dẹ̀wù rẹ̀ kó máa pe àfáà ní mọ̀nàfìkì àwọn tó lọ bá ròyìn gan fúnra wọn kí wọ́n sọ wá pé a lè rọ̀ dí aláwọ̀ áníhù fún ọ̀sàbí ànábì tọ́lọ̀ bá lò fún wọn gangan Quran verse 100 so Allah ti kọ́ ìlẹ́kọ̀ọ́ pé ayé bàbá sọ pé ò sí mọ́ o Allah says prophetic statement and the view of the past predecessor mo ta gbé tó ẹ̀ka lẹ̀ nìyẹn adẹ̀dúpẹ́ bẹ́ẹ̀ bàbá wa adúpẹ́ fún yín gan káníyàn bàbá wa ọkọ wa ní èsì gidi ni ètò gbé wáyé ó máa dá wa lálẹ́ bàbá wa ti kọ́ wa ní súnà tipẹ́tipẹ́ wọ́n ní kọ́lọ̀ kó bọ́lá kọ́lọ̀ ń ṣe ọlọ́run kọ́lọ̀ kó rẹ̀ bídí àṣetá nílẹ̀ kó gbé súnà nẹ́bí Muhammad òkè súnà wà lọ́rin ó wà ní Sẹ́yìn ó wà ní Ìbàdàn ó wà ní Ṣómólú ó wà lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ so ìtọ́ àfi gbé pùtù ẹ̀kalẹ̀ nìyẹn o kò tó kà pẹ̀lú àmírù kan o mísánà kan o mùdírù kan o àmàmù kan no kí lọ́lọ́run sọ kí lànàbì sọ tó bá ànábì lò gbà wọ́n ju gbogbo àfáàyè lọ all the companions of the prophet they were greater than all scholars both living and dead take it or you leave it it may be your father it may be your teacher you are less concerned you don't mind who does us is God this Islam belongs to Almighty Allah. It was sent through Prophet Muhammad sallam, and those who understand this more are the companions. So come to Lagos Island today. They are going to beam it live. Just type Woliola TV. You are going to see it. You are going to beam it live. So we want to tell people that the only pristine Islam is Allah's statement, prophetic statement, and the view of the past pious predecessor. Islam is not the religion of Arab or the Hausas or the Yorubas. It's an international universal religion. It does not belong to any schools, any region, any tribe, any races. So come and learn pristine Islam and always follow my page, Woliola TV or Alpin Komodina Jala. There I only quoted that three sources: Allah's statement, prophetic statement, and the view of past pious predecessor. So we are less concerned about whoever that is bragging or ranting. We don't even know that we are ranting. A lot of things have been concluded. You can never practice Islam without the hadith. Hadith tell us how many rakah, how many days of fasting, many things. So if you want to know hadith, go and learn. You cannot old school start certificate and continue to be arguing with the professors of Islam. It's a non-entity. So kò ṣẹlẹ̀ rárá ọmọ secondary school bàbá professor jiyàn kó náà ti ṣe irú yẹn. So ẹ̀sìn Islam tá à ń ṣe yìí o ọ̀rọ̀ Ọlọ́run nínú Kùránì ọ̀rọ̀ ànábì inú àdìsí àtàwọn tó bá ànábì lò gbà mẹ́ta yẹn náà ni ẹ̀ẹ́dẹ̀ lè mọ̀ jù wọ́n lọ ọlọ́ba gan lẹ́ẹ̀lì bá wọn so ẹ̀sìn ilé wa corrupted o àwọn afá lè bàjẹ́ o I don't doubt it. Nobody is complete. Nobody is encyclopedia of knowledge or island of wisdom. But for you to contribute to hadith discussion, you must be a muhaddis, an expert. In whole Nigeria, we have 6 professors of hadith. I have a lot of doctorates. But for you, a school art holder, without any renowned scholars as your teacher, you cannot be talking about Islam like that. Gone are the days. Hey, Baba sọ pé kọ́lá ṣe kọ́kọ́ o, kọ́lá aláwọ̀, kọ́lá Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because it's a religion that you can Google, you can go to anything. Even just type islam.wa.qcom. You got any question. So my brother, my sister, my father, my mother in Islam, please, your religion is going to be accepted when you follow the norms, the rules and regulations. So I began the program in 2008, and it was based on Qala Allah, Qala Rasul, the 5 Salafis. You can never see me mention names, organization, town, or villages. I don't personalize issue, but I make sure that I said what I know, and I don't care whom the horse is God, because I'm not personalize anything. So my brother, try and learn about your Islam. Try to know what Islam forbids and what Islam allows. Because at the end of the day, you came to this world lonely, you are going back lonely. You're going to be questioned lonely. Nobody is going to support your cause. Nobody. Yamatubola Sarayim. So, kò ní sí Mudiru, kò ní sí Imamu, kò ní sí Amiru, kò ní sí Shehu, kò ní sí Jalala. So where are you trying to trouble yourselves? You came into this world lonely, you are going back lonely. I'm going to be questioned lonely. So try as much as you can to practice pristine Islam. Àdìjú bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ ní ọjọ́ tèmi lágbára Ọlọ́run. A tún máa wá ní ọjọ́ mẹ́jọ. Àwọn náà là máa wá lágbà ọlọ́run iná là máa bá ẹ má gbàgbé o kí náà pè ní Islam ọlọ́run sọ ànábì sọ wọn tó bá ànábì lògbà tó ń pè sàábé tó ju gbogbo àfáàyè lọ gbogbo sàábé gbogbo àfáàyè lọ wọn jàmbá kẹwọn Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina azaban nar wa tawaffana ma'al abrar ya aziz ya Allah ya Ghaffar ya rabbal alamin subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Assalamu alaikum Markaz Dawa kó gbogbo ènìyàn síbi post Ramadan lecture ìyẹn wá sí ẹ̀yìn àwẹ̀ eléyìí tó máa wáyé lọ́jọ́ Sunday ọjọ́ 23 oṣù karùn-ún 23 May 2021 láago 9 àárọ̀ ní Àjàdílẹ̀wá event center 71 Bangbose Street Lagos Island ìpínlẹ̀ Èkó pẹ̀lú àkòrí ọjọ́ ọ̀la ẹ̀sìn Islam nílẹ̀ Yorùbá àwọn oníwàásí Imam Abdulhakeem Al-Kutubi ni wọn yóò máa bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ lórí líla àwọn ọ̀dọ́ lọ́yẹ̀ lórí Islam eléyìí tí ò lábà wọn nílẹ̀ Yorùbá tí bàbá wa Ustaz Abdulhakeem Abu-Mardiya oníyàwó mẹ́ta yóò máa dá wa lẹ́kọ̀ọ́ lórí pàtàkì àwọn àfáà lójúpọ̀nà Islam nílẹ̀ Yorùbá bàbá wa Amir Komodin Ajala Muhammadu Juma ni yóò máa gba gbogbo ènìyàn lálejò tí wọn yóò sì fún wa ní ìmọ̀ràn gbogbogbò lọ́jọ́ náà ẹ má gbàgbé o ọjọ́ Sunday May 23 2021 ni ní Àjàdílẹ̀wá event center láago 9 àárọ̀ ló mọ bàbá sọ pé nílẹ̀ Yorùbá ẹ̀rí ni kẹ́ ẹ béèrè fún
Wọlé ọ̀la àwa yóò bá Muhammad wọlé ọ̀la. Ọlọ́run á jẹ́ ká bá Muhammad wọlé ọ̀la àmì ẹ̀ pọ̀ ṣùgbọ́n àmì nìkan ò rán o ànábì ti sọ pé ẹni tó bá nífẹ̀ẹ́ ṣe sí òun yóò fẹ́ràn òun ẹni tó bá sì ti fẹ́ràn òun náà ni yóò bọ́ òun wọnú ọgbà àdìjọ́ náà onídẹ̀ra kí wá làwọn ìṣesí ànábì gan-an lè tó wọlé ọ̀la dálé lórí wọlé ọ̀la ẹ pàdé Imam Komodin Ajala àti àwọn gbajúgbajà dáńtó onímọ̀ ìjìnlẹ̀ àfáà tá a máa gbà lálejò ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ọ̀sẹ̀ Sunday aago 10 sí 10 àbọ̀ àárọ̀ làǹfààní ètò wọlé ọ̀la yóò máa gorí afẹ́fẹ́ ní MITV More International Television wọlé ọ̀la 10 to 10:30 a.m. every Sunday wọlé ọ̀la àwòkọ́ṣe tó dára jùlọ